Martha says you got to talk to Dino because I guess there was a certain amount that she is president.
Number,
just corporate wise, this is how it worked. I tell Dino I need $100,000, and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this. Well, I felt pretty good about it because I delivered on everything so far that I said I can do, and I was starting to age in now. I had been a couple of years into it, and I was confident. Some people thought it was a little cocky, but I was just confident because I came from a practical background. I had experience. I wouldn't sell. And I heard this term, "fake it till you make it." I was like, I would never sell anything that I can't provide. I can't do it. So I think Dino felt that going in, but I still had to. And he said, "No, do it for $50,000 or something." It was like he was trying to cut me down. And I'm like, Dino, this is hard cost. This is what it takes to get the piece of equipment, but it will be a revenue stream. I will make money. You give me the money, and I will make money from it.
Good to see you, Scott. It's been a while.
It has been a while. It's been a while, and of course, we're still talking about Gerald Waller.
Gerald has a story to tell. His project Beyond the Set, I think, is a very important project that I'd love for the community to get behind and somehow fund it so that we can become a permanent museum installation somewhere. It needs a home.
Do you remember he actually handed me my start paperwork for my very first role, my only role on Firestarter? He actually had a copy of my deal memo.
That's pretty darn granular. That goes right back to the origin of this whole situation.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I say he's probably the closest thing to an historian that the studio's ever had.
Yeah, well, he's got the stuff, but he's also got the knowledge. It's in his head.
It's in his soul.
Not only that, he had become the phone company.
I came in what I assumed my role was the building, the soundstage, the electrical design of all the distribution systems, quickly realizing I'd need to do the portable distribution system. And then there became a third element that I would be tasked with, and that was a telecommunications system. What we were doing in 1983 and 84 was fine for one film.
Right.
But now, and a few phones, and we just used WallerSouth, good old Ma Bell, right? They came in, they provided the phones, they set it up, and the productions would get their phones and handle that. And that wasn't working when it became fluid, and we started doing more productions, and we needed more phone lines. So I was asked to make it work, do something different. And that's when I said, I can do that. I got all this other stuff. I can do that. And I proposed our own PBX, our own telecommunication system, that we would have our own telephone company and that we could generate revenue from it. And that I would design it such that we would have line charges for each phone and that we surcharge on the long distance, and that I would control the features, functions of what the phones could do, and we would install and do everything in-house.
Wow.
I said the one catch is I need $100,000 to do that.
In 1985.
1985.
1985. Yeah, 1985. Well, it was the best of what was available at the time for 500 lines. We needed 500 phones capability. And I did the research on that. I looked at what was, in New York and LA and other systems and realized I needed to segregate these phones. I need separate billing systems. I need these functions, but I need to keep it rugged and less is more. I'm going to charge $10 a week per phone line. I'm going to charge for a lease of that phone for the period you're here. You're going to give it back to me when you're done, and I'm going to give you solid service.
If I may interject, I remember the phone system very well. You had your 9 keys or whatever on the phone. You had a few functions you could do through those phones. It was just a hard handset.
Right.
And it worked.
Right.
It worked. And because I've been through some iterations, I was always envied and missed your phone system when I had to go somewhere else and do it differently.
Yeah. And it probably, John, was the best around at the time, 1985.
And you dialed 9 to get a long distance line.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that very well.
Yeah. I told Daniel, I said, I'm going to put in a PBX and I want you to be my telephone guy. I'm going to shift you from the electric side to the telephone side. You're going to be WallerSouth, or you're going to be WallerSouth. I think that's what I told him.
WallerSouth.
We're going to do WallerSouth. We give them electrons. We got photons on the stages. We got offices. Everything's humming. Stages are humming. We're going to do this now. And he became a phone man in 1985, and I bought the PBX. And within 2 years, I was turning a profit. I designed the system. I went to Texas, Plano, Texas, in 1985. Got my certification in PBX operation.
Wow. Was that like a class? Was that
It was a 1 week class, just to tune me up even more.
Mm-hmm.
What does PBX mean?
It's a public exchange system. It's an old terminology for telephone system. So any company would have, at that time, a small telephone system. It'd be called PBX. And it could be, but when you're talking 500 lines,
that need to be chopped up into
go anywhere
projects.
And projects,
Yeah.
built separately,
Yeah.
managed, maintained.
You were literally WallerSouth Mini.
Yeah, we were.
And by the way, on Manhunter, I was calling Japan, of all places, because they had me shopping for things that were far, far away.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. I helped pay for the sign.
Well.
Yeah, I made more some weeks than we did with Lightning and Grip on our initial.
Is that right?
With the long, everybody was calling long distance.
I see.
They didn't have a cell phone. They didn't have.
Right.
I was not with a big surcharge, and actually it was probably competitive because I was getting it on T1 lines. I had several T lines coming in, and so I tried to stay fair with the rates, and it was very fair as far as $10 a week per line. So an average production, if they needed 50 lines, you're going to pay me $10 a week, and you're going to pay the initial, which covered my labor on the install.
Sure.
I didn't charge for an install. If you wanted a single line phone, $50. That's the lease fee for that phone for the period you're here. Then I'll give you a bill each week for your long distance, weekly. And if you want something on demand, I'll print it out for you the next day or day, as soon as we can get to it. And I had Belinda Baker doing that. Mm-hmm. She worked I brought her in as a facility coordinator. They don't have any clue. They pick up the phone, they got a dial tone.
That's it.
They don't realize how they got the dial tone.
And it worked well.
It worked really good.
I missed it when I was gone.
It worked really well.
Elsewhere.
It was.
Well, let me also say, in all the years, I never heard anybody bitching about the phone.
Well, it was a digital system, and that was early. So that was 1985. It was a good digital SL1. Northern Telecom is the biggest manufacturer of telephone systems at that time. So it was a rugged tank-like, what you would see used in large corporate facilities. So I just married it right in.
I'm remembering this stuff. So each production, you had to prefix 343.
Yep.
Each production has different 35. Your 34,
That's right.
700s.
What I did, I bought those numbers in bulk, so I would be assigned. Those numbers were ours, the bank, and then a production would come in, and I would usually ask the production coordinator, if they'd been here before, what block would you like? 3,700, 3,400.
Right.
I'll see what I have available. So I would give them first dibs. If it was a production coordinator I really liked, I might push them to the front of the line and give whatever. But I try to take care of everybody. And it did. You got to think when I had it up and running, I had it run into capacity a few times. So you got people talking on 400, between 400 and 500 phones at a time.
At a time.
All analog, twisted
Right.
copper voice
Right.
on copper lines.
Right. And, you know, I need one of those phones now to put in my living room because they were rugged. I mean, Daniel would get upset when one would break because we would get at least 5-6 production runs out of it because they were so rugged.
Wow, that is pretty impressive.
It would pay for itself on one picture. So you buy the phone for the least charge on one film, and then it would start to make money. But the line charge would help cover the T1 cost.
And I'm going to harbor on it again because it was a basic handset, you know, a desktop handset with your basic telephone keypad.
Push button.
Push button keypad.
Yep. Almond color.
They're almond color with a little brown face on it.
Yep.
And Daniel walk around with his little phone thing on
Always
his belt.
hanging on his belt,
Yep.
Put them in. And do you remember a couple of functions that you had through the keypad?
Call forwarding, call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
call waiting.
And then I go to another show, and the guy would come in with a plastic kind of multi-line thing with all sorts of buttons and stuff on it when you go to another show, and it just wasn't. You can make local and long-distance calls fine, but not much else.
Didn't know much about Jim Cameron. I knew he was a real filmmaker. I knew that he was a technical guy. So I would hopefully share some technical space with him and be able to talk in those terms. But, you know, I never thought of myself as a filmmaker. I was learning each year. I learned more. And I think the main reason I finally produced was because I wanted to learn more. And I wanted to have fun with my martial arts friends. So it was a good meeting, and you know, I realized I was learning quickly. Carolco had a lot of properties, and Jim Cameron had a lot of ties with Carolco, and I saw it as something that could be very good for us. And I'd already started working on Stage 8 for
Sylvester.
Yeah. I think it was Rennie Harlan.
Yes, it was.
And Rennie had been here already with
Ramblin' Rose. Yep.
Jim knew. He knew as much as any producer about Wilmington. It's amazing how the few degrees of separation there are, and how small the industry is.
Oh yeah.
And people, I mean, by that time we're talking 1990. We'd been out there for 7 years, and the word going around. So if you were an established filmmaker, you knew Wilmington, and you knew who worked there. You knew what they were capable of.
Oh, and our people by 1990 were all over the world.
Absolutely,
working on film.
And not only we carried the mail for Jim on the Abyss, big contingent of Wilmington.
Yes,
carried the mail.
Yes.
So I'd hope he kind of knew where.
Yeah,
that
and
crowd
you know,
came
at that time, I think by 1990, you did realize you were just part of a big family. Any one of us by ourselves on set, you know, it's not.
We can do one.
It's not
thing
music until we get it all together.
You're right.
And then it becomes sweet music.
Very well said.
We need all the instruments playing. So came back from that Carolco, and again, by that time, they said, please stay, you're facility manager now. We're going to give you this and this and this to do. And that was cool because by that time, the building was slowing down.
Yeah.
I was building Stage 8. I was doing some soundproofing. We had Graham Harrington taking care of lighting and grip, so I didn't have that headache. The phone system, I was getting pretty established. So now I could start moving out. I did want to leave, but Carolco made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I decided to stay. And then I was able to start thinking about marketing. I would start going to L.A. with Kent Swaim for Showbiz Expo. And I'd meet a lot of folks there. I would start any scout we had, I would do the walkabout, you know. I would sell the place. And it went good because I had good communication with production designers by then. I'd worked on enough projects. And, you know, one good thing about my whole time is, I worked here when we had 3 and 5 productions, and I was able to walk through all the stages, all the offices, all the departments, and the art department I think I loved the most back then. Yeah. Today, I just love going in, looking at the blueprints, looking at the models, seeing it going from this concept to reality. The sets, I loved set construction. I loved it. I loved what Jeff and Tom were doing. I loved walking on set. And that was my kid carpenter in me, seeing the building going on. Amazing sets. But I was able to walk through that any time of the day. And that was part of my job also, is to go through, make sure where it's all in compliance issues, make sure we're making OSHA. I'm happy to say, the studio in 20 years, we never had a compliance issue, the studio itself. And we were well known for that in L.A. We were well known for that around the world, that we were not backwoods soundstage, fly-by-nights. We were considered professionals on the film side and on the studio support side. Right. We were recognized. Rick McCullum and I were friends, and he flew me out to Skywalker Ranch for a week. I spent a week at Skywalker Ranch. Wow. They gave me the full show, took me all through. I was looking at ways that we might work with them and Carolco and deepen the relationship. Young Indy and Radioland Murders, I think it was, with Rick. Rick and I, it was just a great. Rick had great experience. We had some mutual interest in the community. Rick was impressed because that was 1990. We were Full House. I didn't have any room for him. And Nicholas Rogue was the director, I think. Yeah. So he wanted to come back. And he had a good experience. Yeah. And he talked to George into coming in and coming back to the Young Indie series.
So he was kind of instrumental in that.
He was.
Oh, wow.
There was a lot of stuff. People don't realize, we talk about Dino in the beginning, but the biggest part of this story is in the middle. And I could say where I got to 1989, I could really say I did it my way. And I was able to really work with what I'd learned from 1983 to 1989 to now applying personal relationships that I had developed around the world that people weren't even aware of that I was doing. Right. They thought I was facility manager. Right. The guy that's going to yell at me if I park my car over there.
That's right.
And I'm like, no, I don't want to yell at you, dude, but just don't jump over the fence.
Yeah.
So there's so much more. So I was in the editing equipment business too. So I had 6-plates, 8-plates, Nagras, the sound Nagras, and then I worked on, one of my focus in 1989 was to build a tenant infrastructure. I wanted as many tenants as we could get. Right. I wanted to be permanent on the lot. But we were showing a director around, and I was showing him the editing suites. I had 2 fully suited up right here, right across the hallway. Mm-hmm. And moviolas, they'll crank them, the moviolas going on. But anyway, this director was saying, they told me I have to edit in digital. They said I can't do it in film. It was Avids. They rented Avids. They were bringing them in, and this is a very well-known, old-school British director. He was terrified. He says, I don't know if I can do it or not. It just struck me that when he said that, we're entering a new phase, starting to enter in this digital technology, which I did the little bit in the spiel there, were the T1 lines in communication. We were starting to enter a digital age. Right. It was on the horizon of the internet in 1993, 94. My computers were getting bigger and better. Yep. And we were starting to see a new phase, and I was starting to think, what do I need to do to get the studio and our interest going ahead of, not behind.
That's right.
I want to be ahead of the curve, not behind. And so James Cameron I thought was exciting. I've got George Lucas, Quentin Skywalker, I got James Cameron coming in. We're going to nail him. We're going to build this stage for Carolco. Carolco is going to take us to the next level. And then Cutthroat Island was made. Carolco Pictures, $147 million loss in 1991. Carolco was They'd spent $35 million to buy
Right.
this, but they were spending money everywhere. And again, Kassar and Vine go their separate ways. But at the same, shortly after they bought the studio, in the same time frame, we were talking about Cutthroat Island. And it's another book, if you want to read, is out there. The stories about, read what you can about Cutthroat Island.
The
Gina
making of-
Davis, Rennie Harlan. I don't know if you'll find the actual book, but you will find a lot to read about Cutthroat Island. Gina Davis, Rennie Harlan, their relationship, Kassar's relationship, the money spent, and the insane stuff that was done during the production.
Was Matthew Modine in
Drove
that
up,
as well?
I believe he was, drove up the cost.
I know this picture now. Yeah.
It was in 147, and that, again,
And this is
you
91.
multiply times 2.5.
Yeah.
So 147, 300, $400 million.
So you're saying this kind of turned out to be the King Kong Lives?
It was.
Of my,
It was. I was seeing the same
Carol Cut.
story. You were talking about we don't have any story. I was seeing the same story again. Wow. I've got an international filmmaker who's come in. He's an independent. He's got a studio. He's gone public. Now he's got a box office bomb. One picture. This one picture takes down the whole company.
Is that right?
On top of, there's
So-
already some bad things going on. They needed the picture, let me put it that way. There were some good things in the pipeline. The Rambo phase era was over with. They were looking for what do we have after Rambo. They had
Next
Terminator.
blockbuster series.
They had Cameron. But they got to Cutthroat Island and they couldn't get Spider-Man, the acquisition. They couldn't complete a deal to move forward after Cutthroat Island. That was like all full stop for production.
Yeah.
And they told us, it's okay, you guys got to make it on your own. We are not going to build stages. We are not going to be your sugar daddy. You're going to have to make it on your own. And we did. But you know what our saving grace was? Movies of the week.
Yes, which we did quite
Movies
a
of
few
the
of
week.
17
Movies
wonders.
of
we
the
saw.
week.
Yeah,
$2.5 million budget. And they just kept coming.
they just kept coming.
It was like all of a sudden we get into this Carolco fiasco, and here comes the movie of the weeks. And that was steady butter. I mean, I'd get one out and another one come in. I'd have them overlapping, coming in, going out, coming in, going out. And when I look at total production, we did 28 films in the Dino era. We did 58 projects during the Carolco era.
Wow.
That was amazing because, I mean, I had Barbara Streisand come in, and I crushed on Barbara Streisand when I was younger, too. And we're walking around the lot, but it's at the same time when all this other stuff's going on. And I think she's scouting for Prince of Tides. I think it was Prince of Tides. But she came in at that time, and she, I think, went to South Carolina.
Yes.
So, it's like I get all these scouts, and I think I would have it, and then it would go. I thought I had James Cameron, and I lost him because of Cutthroat Island. Again, from this director saying, I don't want to use Avid. I don't know what that is. And a computer. I want to cut it on the 6 plate. They would be even when I was walking with Barbara Streisand, those kind of scouts, something about scout people that, I don't know, John, you've done a lot of scouts. They get comfortable. I had Oliver Stone come in for a scout, and he didn't want to come in during the day. I would get this all the time, too. He came in at night. And he came in with his entourage, and I met them up at the front office. Oliver comes in, and he says, "Where are we?" And he's like, we're in this. He didn't even know what city he was in. And some other things involved, too. And I had my coat laying on the couch, and he grabs my coat, and he balls it up. He puts it underneath his head, and he's lying on the couch. And I forget who the production designer was then. He said, "Okay, Joe, we want to look at the stages. We want to look at this. We want to look at that." I said, "Okay, let's do it. Let's go." And so we got up and walked up, and he had my coat was been left there. I got in there later, and a check had just been crumbled. He crumbled my payroll. I think it was a Friday. He came in, he had crushed it. But he wasn't here when he was here on that scout.
Yeah.
He was so tired from being wherever, how many scouts they had done.
Right.
And the studio said, you got to go look at Wilmington. You would get that a lot. And some scouts, they didn't want to be here, but they said, you got to go look at Wilmington. You got to go look. In the scheme of things, they needed in the budget, and you need to get 3 numbers. You go to Wilmington, go to wherever, but go get your numbers. I'm not going to push you to go there, but show me that you're coming back with 3 options.
Right.
And there was a period of time where fiscal responsibility after DEG and Carol Code, we started to see more of that. So the number one complaint I would get, and I'm talking about 100 productions that did not come in my 20 years, was direct flights, not having flights, direct flights. Number one complaint.
Right.
That was number one complaint. Second was, I just don't want to be here. You know, in the early 80s, everybody was excited about it. I mean, so many people were falling in love. Every Englishman, every Italian was falling in love. I mean, everybody was falling in love.
Yeah.
And that seemed to change a little bit in the 90s. And it was more about, well, what's the experience going to be? And those damn flights. I heard that more than anything else.
Yep.
And I do know, the other thing I know remotely from the art department, we knew exactly how long it took to get anything here from anywhere.
Right.
Without the prop house or kind of services here. And the FedEx, you knew FedEx down to the minute.
Yeah.
You knew counter to counter down to the minute. I had limousine services in Los Angeles and other places to go pick up the prop from this counter, drive it to the airport, hand it to this person, and it gets on that plane and comes
Oh,
here.
you literally got it down to the person.
Oh, yeah.
We got to think in the 80s, we were trying to push as much money locally as we could.
Oh, yeah.
For a number of reasons. And I remember they asking me, I was sitting down with some local vendors I'd done business with. They said, Gerald, how come you're not buying from us anymore? I said, I'm paying more for getting it on time. You tell me you're going to have me something in 2 days, and I don't see it for a week. I want to give you the money. I want to give you the business. But for me, what's more important is the delivery, the supply chain. You got to give me a solid supply chain. If you tell me a day, you know, it's the good old boys. You know, I'll order it for you. I'll get it. Come in. That didn't work in the film business.
That's right.
If you said you wanted it Thursday, you got to have it Wednesday. You know, don't tell me it's coming Saturday. Don't tell me that. And I think that's the first time I told some vendors that, listen, I'm just not going to do business with you if you can't step up. And they stepped up. The supply chains got better.
Yeah.
They had to, if you want the business. Yeah. There's a story that's shared, and I think this is an important story. I think the story came from Frank. Community they wanted to demonstrate how the money was being spread in the community. You may have heard this story before. Because they were getting lukewarm community support. And so what they did, they started paying per diem in $2 bills. And the $2 bills started showing up everywhere. And people were saying, where are these damn $2 bills coming from? And it was coming from the production company.
Brilliant.
And that's why, you know, I always say in every time I did an interview, I'm like, listen, it's not studio business, it's community business. The money spreads. And, you know, it'll be the community. If the community said today, we don't want the business, guys, it's gone.
You know, my number one job for the first 5-10 years of my career, actually for my entire career, is to spend other people's money.
Yeah.
And I tallied it up at one time. I think my first job was 84, and I think somewhere around 99, I kind of tallied that I personally spent about $10 million. Wow.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I would spend about $3 million a year. In the 1990s, the cost of a movie of the week was around $2.5 million was the budget. That's what they could realize. They know they could make money off advertising at 2.5.
Gotcha.
And budget-wise, that worked. When you budgeted L.A., wherever, at the time in the early 90s, it fit. Wilmington, they could do it for 2.5. But as it didn't take long, and then as Matlock comes in, 93, I want to think?
92.
92.
Yeah, that was first season.
Okay, then we start seeing a shift in rates going up because Andy says, we're going to respect, we're going to pay, we're going to this is what you're going to pay my people. And we start to see rates coming up. Then we start seeing the movie of the week rates going up to 2.7 and 3. And then it was like, okay, if you hit 3, we're not coming.
We're not coming.
And I was like, we'll do what we can, but we don't control the labor markets. And that's where labor was starting to reach in.
And at the exact same time, 1994 is when 491 got its charter.
Right.
See,
and listen, the guys deserve. I will never say shouldn't have happened.
But I will say that the movie of the weeks was the direct connect to the unions getting strong enough to start, because I know I was one of those people that was just getting my ass kicked. My guys were getting their asses kicked
for 10 years.
And it's just but really the TV movies were the ones that, because those were 19, 20-hour days every day.
Listen, everybody needs pensions. They need an insurance. I don't argue.
True, but I'm just saying that particular model of business really.
And we had volume.
Yeah,
the volume was there.
Yeah.
And for us getting into it, then we thought, well, this is unlimited. We were getting so much.
Yeah.
But I was hearing the stories from the production managers each time. It was like, a little bit, I was seeing the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I knew at the stage was. I knew what everything was cost.
Yeah.
I mean, I was able to get that information direct because it helped me market future stuff.
Well, sure it does.
And then comes Canada. Oh, Canada.
Man. That's right.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah,
we can do it cheaper up in Canada.
And I mean, overnight it felt like.
Overnight is what, it was like a quake. They were doing it cheaper. They got the number back to 2.5.
Yep.
Doing the same thing.
Exchange rate and the
incentives, exchange rate, all in. Bottom line, if you want to do movie of the weeks at that time, don't go over 2.5. We hit the mark where we were steadily over 2.5. They couldn't, it was what it was for when it was. Trying to move into features, we were getting some MGMs. We were getting, Billy Bathgate. And,
yep.
We had some respectable feature films come in. Ninja Turtles, glory, hallelujah. I didn't know what a Ninja Turtle was.
I didn't either.
I was so happy to see a Ninja Turtle when they came in because they had a decent budget. They had $30 million.
Yep.
And establishing a relationship. We get the second one. And then Muppets coming in, Muppets from Space, Elmo Grouchland. So we maintained by being able to grab some of the feature, mix in, blend in. But it was only a matter of time. Market forces were.
Sure.
We were suffering from what LA suffered from us. In 96, I was going to leave because we had reached the end of Carolco. It was up for auction. And again, nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted the studio. This is when it really looked bad because we had Calvin Gilmore, Myrtle Beach, had bid on it. Sass from Raleigh had bid on it. The bidders were not filmmakers. They were not. And I was like, no, I can't do this. I can't go Calvin Gilmore. I can't be what.
I remember the rumors of it was going to turn into a carpet warehouse.
Oh, it was.
That was one of the potential buyers.
I probably did that. The thing about rumors, this is quick, and I'll move back to the story. If you don't hear one by 10 o'clock on Studio Lot, you start one. Then it would be my job. It would be my job by 2 o'clock to say it was either true or false. But that is the rule.
Oh, my God.
Don't forget, 10 o'clock. Get it out there. So 1996, I'm looking at it, I'm like the restless suitor on the back. Come on, somebody, come on.
Yeah, right.
Carol, come on, somebody come in here.
Save us.
Dino was trying to go around to the back door with Ferretti, but it turned out that the bid was $3.4 million, I think. It's a public record. It's the deed. You can look at the registries, North Carolina. You'll see the deed.
Is that from
Screen Gems? It's on public record, and Cine Films. The Cine Studios. It's public record. Register of deeds, $16 million plus. So nobody wanted us. So I was ready to go again. Kent Swain George came in, and I didn't know George. I knew Screen Gems and EUE were two separate things. George comes in, and he came down to the office, and I was sitting in my office. Kent was wearing, first time I'd ever seen him in jeans, was wearing jeans and a shirt. I think he assumed that, everything was going to stay the same and that we would continue to operate the facility. George shuts the door and says, Gerald, I want you to stay. I want to make you vice president of operations, and I want you to work with Frank Capra. Frank wants to work with you. Frank's asked for you. So something like that. And Frank did. He said, he's like, bro. And Frank got involved. He was auctioning someone else, and they connected with George and decided. And Frank said, I want Gerald. So that's how I stayed after 1996.
What was your relationship with Frank prior to that?
It was just from what experience we had with each other with Marie. He was on the studio a lot.
But a big gap in between.
A huge gap. But Frank knew what I was. I mean, he knew everything that was happening here.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure he always.
Because Deborah.
He kept family here, yeah.
Family. And,
yeah.
He knew what I was doing. He knew my interest. He knew my number one goal in life was to keep this place open no matter what happened.
Rap Beer is written and directed by Scott Davis and John D. Kretschmer. Theme music is by Turbo Pro Project. This one-of-a-kind podcast is recorded at Cinespace Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina. Copyright Bluffco Industries, 2024.